We had recently George Floyd, then the solution was burn the city, loot, riot. We had Gaza, we had the solution was protest, burn the city, loot, riot. We had people with
everybody said that.
I'll tell you this, I have seen more violence at a Best Buy on a Black Friday than I have in these...
Hold on a second.
Let out,
Joe,
every single person arrested in New York.
Joe, it's interesting that you would say that about...
Those precious Mexican babies, those precious immigrants who are being snatched out of their homes and out of their workplaces, they have the same value as all of us sitting around this table. Now, we can vilify them and lead toward a movement toward, because where we're really headed,
You're unhappy.
where we're really headed is a civil war.
Trump
Let's
has
be
suggested
honest
that
about
these protesters are...
The president is been clear on these issues.
What has he been clear about?
He tried to, I mean, there's this conversation going on now that's trying to ignore the fact that the president did offer the National Guard on January 6th.
What has he been clear about as it relates...
Selling hot dogs in the middle of the lanes of 101. And all that, Abby, goes to look what Gavin and Karen were doing at the time, Abby. I mean...
But what evidence is there that any of these people are being paid by Democrats?
Well, I mean, what evidence...
I've seen it firsthand.
Hello, everybody. Guys, let's get right into this segment. Humpty Dumpty is making an absolute fool of himself. Let's just check this out and we'll talk about it.
Newsom, they're talking about Trump's order, which he signed, which did not just apply to Los Angeles or California. It applied to the entire country. And he also said something, Abel, you were the lieutenant governor of that state at one time. He said that authoritarian regimes begin by targeting people who are the least able to defend themselves. And he said that's what Trump is doing now.
I couldn't disagree more with what Gavin Newsom said. You need a... I mean, I live under Gavin Newsom. I don't know how many people. I live under Gavin Newsom today over the last, 6 years. And I think we need to fact check his speech, to be very sincerely, because if you look at what he's done in California, he got the biggest surplus. It's gone. I mean, I can go down the fire hydrants even have water in them. I can go on and on and on. He's trying to differentiate himself from other candidates. He's running for president. At the end of the day, Abby, all I can say is that we had 11 million people that came into America illegally. We don't know who they are. We don't know where they came from. There's a lot of them in California. Californians, I haven't had anybody come up to me and say, hey, get the National Guard out of here. Nobody in California is saying that. They want to be safe. And to have President Trump send the National Guard, at the end of the day, it's a message that he didn't trust. He didn't trust Karen Bass, and he didn't trust Gavin Newsom to operate independently and to protect his troops, ICE agents, federal buildings, and so forth. So he did what he had to do. And I think Californians support that, to be very sincere, Abby. Angelenos support that. I don't hear anybody saying, get out of here.
I think it's really important.
That idiot said no one comes up to him and say, get the National Guard out of here. You're a right-wing nut. Why would anyone you know come up to you and say that? I think...
And if you listen to his words tonight, a couple things it's important for a Democrat to say when he looked right in the camera and he said, if you do something illegal, you shouldn't be looting, you're going to go to jail. You've got every right in the world to protest it. Everybody has the right to protest. But he, a Democrat, looked in the camera and said, if you break the law, you're going to jail. There'll be no unlawfulness for all the folks who step to a Democrat and say that we're not for law and order. He looked at the camera and said it plainly out of his feet. I'm not going back and relitigating his record, but I'm saying what he said tonight, trying to calm a nation and giving Democrats, somebody actually fighting back and getting in the face of a bully saying, bring it on, big boy.
Chuck, let me just share this with you, because this is very important. In California, we had a situation where stores were being looted by people. There was no ramifications. The people of California put Proposition 36 on the ballot that in essence made it stiffer penalties and stopped people from stealing. Gavin Newsom opposed it. This is just a couple of months ago. Gavin Newsom opposed it, and the people of California voted almost 70%. So those are important facts.
Let's start with the most preposterous part of this speech. This is night number 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 nights of riots and looting and violence on the streets of his principal city. And Gavin Newsom uses this opportunity to give a speech against Donald Trump, not about the rioters, not about the people who are out there committing the crime. NBC, other networks are saying this is the first step in his presidential ambitions, and basically this is what's going to make Gavin Newsom president. Well, if that's the case, let me be the first to salute President J.D. Vance in 2028, because that's what's going to happen whether Democrats like it or not if this is their main guy.
Listen, Gavin Newsom didn't create the situation, right? This situation was created by Donald Trump, who...
Enforcing laws.
Well, no, actually not enforcing law, doing something that hadn't been done in 60 years, which is bring out the National Guard, something that Donald Trump himself had said before was unconstitutional, to use the National Guard without the authority and approval of that state's governor. I want to go back to your initial question about what authoritarians do. And I don't live under Gavin Newsom, but I lived under Daniel Ortega, and I fled communism, and I fled authoritarianism. And what we are seeing all over America is a man who is not just trying to be a dictator for one day, is a man who's acting as an authoritarian, a man who's giving himself a parade on Saturday for his birthday, like they do in North Korea and they do in places like Russia. A man who is attacking anybody who opposes him and weaponizing government against universities, against law firms, against anybody who dares speak up against him. A man who said he was going to go against criminals and gang members, and who is going after mothers and fathers and tias and abuelas and people who've lived here for 30 and 40 years and have built lives and are good, decent, hardworking people. Many of them who are here under some color of law. Because if you're showing up to an immigration court, you're not here undocumented. You're here under a political asylum. You're here under parole. You're here under TPS and going to a check-in. So I, for one, I'm very happy to see somebody that isn't afraid to speak up and call an authoritarian an authoritarian. And if it's Gavin Newsom as a result of what's happening in California now, I welcome it, because I have been so thirsty for somebody that is not cowardly bending the knee and selling out to Donald Trump as he does all of this to America. It's not just to Latinos.
Gavin Newsom.
I mean, J.D. Vance himself called Trump America's Hitler. Why do you think he said that? Guys, this is all just pure red meat for Trump's base. Trump knows that. They hate California, Chicago, New York, and they hate brown people. Above all, right? They hate black and brown people. That's right. So Trump knows this about them, and he knows how this plays to them. Curious to where all the immigrant raids are in red states, like Indiana, New Mexico, Arkansas. I wonder why that is. If Trump cared about crime, you would think, if Republicans cared about crime, you would think they would target the top 5 states in crime, which are red states. This is so unbelievable. And it's very simple why Trump is doing this, right? He is trying to take over the news media for a couple weeks to distract from him and his Nazi ex, Elon, keeping secrets about what he was doing on Epstein's Island. And we all knew Trump, and Elon for that matter, were predators. But Republican voters' heads are exploding after one of their very own, Elon, ousted Trump. And I think the voters know this about both of them. But now their defense, their shielding of them is no more, right? Because even one of your very own said that Trump is in those Epstein files. And as you can imagine, Republican voters, of course, are making excuses for Trump, because of course they are. Like, this is what I said about the average Republican voter, especially the men. They only ask if they should arch their back more as they're getting bent over. These people are overwhelmingly, insanely incurious about things. They obviously don't care about children being abused. I mean, this is a party that is completely okay with kids being gunned down at schools. Because for what reason? Because they want to be able to fondle their guns and stick it up their asses. Honestly, I don't know what it is. What's this crazy craze? I grew up in the Bronx, guys. Probably the roughest section in that area. And never felt the need for a gun. Again, Republican men are just a bunch of wusses. They want to act like they are G.I. Joes and play with costumes. That's why they obsess over alpha man this and alpha man that. It's just so obvious that that's not what you are, but you so badly wish you were. But that's getting off a bit off topic. Let's finish this out.
In this speech also said, this is the moment that we Democrats, what he was saying, we're warning about. He said the moment is now. And he's been saying something very similar in his social media posts, saying, wake up. Do you think he's expressing what you believe?
Well, I think the problem is so much deeper that Newsom, he's not the answer to the prayer. And Trump certainly bears major responsibility in what Sister Anna's talking about. But I just think the larger context is that the American empire is undergoing an imperial meltdown and spiritual breakdown, and the people in the street, not always having the right flags and so forth, they're engaging in some kind of prophetic fight back, because the starting point is the suffering of the people. And then you get the various responses. Well, what distinctive features of the collapse of an empire? Militarization abroad, we got 800 military units abroad, and militarizing at home. Martin King talked about what? Militarism, racism, poverty, and materialism will bring down the curtain on America, right? So what kind of response do we have? If it's just going to be narrow partisan responses of Team Republican and Team Democrat, and nobody's concerned about telling the truth, it's critical of both. Nobody's concerned about pushing integrity and honesty and decency. Focus on the suffering of what is going on. In some ways, the whole thing is a distraction, because you got grotesque inequality, you got organized greed at the top, you got spiritual wickedness, not just in the Republican Party. It has its version in the Democratic Party too, not just in politics, in elites across the nation. Universities, mosques, churches, professionally obsessed with what? Gold, not the golden rule. Worshiping the golden calf. Me, money, 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 spectacle, spectacle, spectacle. So there's deeper issues here we have to come to terms with. And this is why it's a very serious
you said
moment.
something that I think is very important, that this is a distraction. While we are talking about this, while Donald Trump is wagging the dog, we are not talking about the ridiculous "Yo Mama is so ugly" contest that he was holding with Elon Musk until a few days ago. We are not talking about the parade that he's throwing. We're not talking about the big, beautiful bill that is flailing and that is going to leave 11 million people without health coverage. We're not talking about the failure of his tariffs and
we're not
economic
talking about this
policy.
because this has gone on for 9 nights without the mayor or the governor of the state doing anything to put these riots under control until Trump started moving in federal troops. Whether you agree with that or not, that was the catalyst for Bass and for Newsom to act. And I'll read one quote that was in an article I read. Pablo Alvarado, the head of the National Day Labor Organization, an organization that actually organized some of these, the peaceful part, I'm assuming, of the protest. Every time there is violence, it's the most vulnerable communities that pay the price. The businesses of the low-income communities are the ones who pay the price. This is people in the crowd saying that. And unfortunately, the Democratic Party, a very small number of them, are the violent insurrectionists. But unfortunately, the broader party accepts it and lionizes it.
Hold on a second.
I have heard Democrat after Democrat condemn violence, and I will tell you this: I have seen more violence at a Best Buy on a Black Friday than I have in these.
Hold on a second.
Let out,
Joe,
released every single person arrested in New York.
Joe, it's interesting that you would say that about violent protests, because Gavin Newsom talked about the context here, which is also that this president pardoned a bunch of violent so-called protesters on January 6th.
He's taking a wrecking ball to our founding fathers' historic project. 3 co-equal branches of independent government. There are no longer any checks and balances. Congress is nowhere to be found. Speaker Johnson has completely abdicated that responsibility. The rule of law has increasingly been given way to the rule of Don. The founding fathers, they didn't live in.
All right, guys, there's a second part of this section that I want to get to. But before we get to that, can anyone really say this country is doing better in any way at all? This country is going to shit. Consumer confidence at 12 years low. Tariffs are going to send people to the unemployment line 100%. Businesses will shut down. Foreign investment into this country has already dropped as countries diversify their purchases around dealing with us because of Donald Trump. This has only been in 6 months. Does anyone in their right mind believe that if Kamala was elected that things would be worse than this or even close to this? The country was doing fine. Inflation was slowly getting better. Look at this mess. For all of you that sat on the couch and decided not to vote for this reason or that reason, do you think it was worth it? This is why voting is so important, and part of the reason I I started this channel. We have a giant boulder hurtling towards our communities, and we need all hands on deck. This is why I talk about uniting amongst different groups, whether black, brown, Jews, Arabs, it doesn't matter. They are all coming for us, one by one. When it's too late, you don't want to ask what you could have done differently. We need to stand united and unbreakable. But let's get to this next segment. Newsom is just going to say more of the same stuff, but let's get to it's the same segment, but a continuation to it.
Just before all of this was happening on the streets, we were talking about Trump because a lot of people have observed correctly that he would have a lot more credibility on the issue of riots, on the issue of violence against law enforcement, had he not taken the step of both encouraging his supporters on January 6th and also pardoning them once he became president again.
I think anyone watching this show or maybe other talking head shows over the next couple of days should play a drinking game where a Democrat who talks about January 6th to distract us from what's happening on June 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th right now in California is really just trying to avoid the facts. But let's put what you said into context. There were 46 arrests in a similar protest in New York City just about 2 months ago, right? We were watching the same things on TV. Alvin Bragg let out every single one of the 46 people who were arrested for assaulting police officers, for burglarizing, for looting, for breaking property, etc. And I'm pointing that out because this is what the Democratic Party's playbook is.
But the thing is, you say that this is just a talking point. It actually happened. It's a thing that actually happened. And you also conveniently would like to forget that it happened. But Donald Trump, there were people who assaulted police officers with American flags. Okay? They broke into the Capitol. At the very least, you could say that is really bad. And Trump shouldn't have pardoned them. And anybody who loots or assaults an officer on the streets of New York or LA, that is also really bad, and they should be prosecuted.
I have been consistent every single time I'm here that if you assault a police officer, whether it's June 6th or January 6th, 2021, you should be prosecuted. No ifs, ands, or buts. No, diffusing what I'm trying to say.
But Trump is not consistent. Is the point that that's the direction of the question I was pointing to?
The president is been clear on these issues.
What has he been clear about?
He tried to. I mean, there's this conversation going on now that's trying to ignore the fact that the president did offer the National Guard on January 6th.
What has he been clear about as it relates to who is allowed to assault police officers and who is not? Who is allowed to riot and who is not?
Nobody should. Again, I'm on the same side as you on this. Right?
Humpty Dumpty fell off the wall right there. He's just saying random words he hears other right-wing pundits say. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He just spoke in circles. He knows what Abby is mentioning here. Cops were viciously attacked on January 6th. Pepper sprayed, bear sprayed, smashed between doors, trampled. Like, these people are truly brainless lemmings. That I don't know if it's just their conspiracy brain, they just believe Trump is the almighty, or what I think is more likely, they know exactly. These people, these are not just like the MAGA 2 brain cell voters. He's a pundit. He knows exactly what's going on. He's just spineless. He wants to keep his job. He wants to keep relevancy in the Republican Party, and he doesn't care who gets hurt in the process.
It's
not about sides. You're saying that he's clear, and I'm just saying, I'm just pointing out that he's not clear. That's all.
Overwhelming, but it's a deeper issue. Namely, when you have people across the board who, when they look at the law, all they see is lack of morality. When they look at order, all they see is lack of justice. So that means what? All you get is brute force and raw might. Whoever has the power triumphs, which means no space for morality, no space for spirituality, cruelty becomes your main strategy, and empathy is an enemy. So all we're asking for is, Sly Stone said everybody's a star, right? We lost him yesterday. Those precious Mexican babies, those precious immigrants who are being snatched out of their homes and out of their workplaces, they have the same value as all of us sitting around this table. Now, we should be able to come up with an immigration strategy that is humane enough, that doesn't demonize them and vilify them and lead toward a movement toward, because where we're really headed,
you're unhappy.
Where we're really headed is a civil war.
Trump
Let's
has
be
suggested
honest
that these
about
protesters
this.
are being paid by Democrats, by Democratic leaders in California.
That gangster activity
As you
going on
pointed
across
out,
the
Joe, people in the protests are desperate for them to remain peaceful. You just made that note earlier in the show. he has no evidence to support this suggestion that they're being paid. Why does he say things like this?
Well, if you look at California, Abby, what's been going on over the last 5 days, those were some professionals, what they were doing. I mean, they shut down Highway 101. The Hollywood freeway was shut down, selling hot dogs in the middle of the lanes of 101. And all that, Abby, goes to look what Gavin and Karen were doing at the time, Abby. I mean...
But what evidence is there that any of these people are being paid by Democrats?
Well, I mean, what evidence...
I've seen it firsthand.
It's
Here in New York.
These people...
Hold on, we're not talking about New York. I'm talking about L.A., where Trump said that they were being paid.
Abby, you look at burning... Who burns vehicles in
Criminals
the middle?
do.
I mean, criminals do.
Criminals do. This is a country with a long and deep and troubled history of protests, where there are fires and there are looting and there is all that stuff. That has happened in this country for decades and decades and decades. That's not new. That's not new.
Anybody could
The issue is
irresponsibly say that those people are being paid by Republicans to provide.
Really quick, that piece of garbage right there, Abel Maldonado, something like that, he's Hispanic. Like, how dare he see this happening to our people and still sides with the white nationalists, the white nationalist party. Look how he tries to talk all softly and gently, like he's coming from a reasonable place. It's just conspiracy garbage. And he knows that. He knows there's no proof, there's no evidence. I mean, this dude is a piece of trash. He's made money off the backs of these kinds of people. Immigrant labor. In fact, Abel, that dude there, as you can imagine, is the son of an immigrant. He spent his childhood working the fields with his father. These are the Hispanics I talk about, with this close the door behind me mentality. I made it, and now I don't want to jeopardize anything I have here and get these white supremacists too mad at me. Maybe they'll accept me. Maybe if I also call people DEI hires, they'll accept me, right? Literal pieces of trash. You're a snake like the rest of the Hispanic and anyone of color who votes for the Republican Party. You know exactly who this party is and how they see our people. How effing dare you? This is why I go hard on people like Little Shermichael. Instead of fighting back, you cowered away and played Nazi soldier for your leaders. How effing pathetic. Like, this dude is a son of an immigrant. He worked the fields. Like, he knows these people.
Provoke tension and to provoke violence then without evidence, right? And we're just going to throw things out without evidence. But listen, the hypocrisy here of Trump is the point. Of him saying that he sent out all of these thousands of National Guard and now 700 Marines because federal agents were being spit on. Well, on January 6th, a police officer of the Capitol died the next day because of the stress and strokes that were brought on from the violence on January 6th. And we had several other police officers, Capitol Hill police officers, committing suicide, dying by suicide in the following days and weeks because of the trauma from January 6th. And yet, he pardoned 1,500 of those insurrectionists as the first act of his presidency. And let's also not forget the cost of sending all of these folks to LA right now for what he's saying might be 60 days. $134 million. And the cost of the parade this weekend, $45 million. While veterans are losing benefits, while veterans are being fired from government jobs.
Yes, he does. And Democrats have to figure out how to navigate around that, because this right here is exactly what Donald Trump
This
would
will
like
be
to see.
an every midterm election ad across the country against Democrats. Remember us all sitting around and talking about the they-them ad, talking about transgender, to bring up something a little controversial here? It'll be the same thing with these rallies. It ain't true, but he'll say, Democrats are with them, and he'll show a burning card, a Mexican flag. He goes, I'm with you, and he'll show a peaceful family at home. That's the way politics works, whether you like it or not.
Is it true? So we had recently George Floyd, and the solution was burn the city, loot, riot. We had Gaza. We had the solution was protest, burn the city, loot, riot. We had people with
Everybody's saying that we shouldn't be burning or rioting anything. Everybody's agreeing on that. I'm even one who's a Latino who comes from an immigrant family saying, if you come here and you break our law in a violent way, you should be sent back. You can't put us back on our heels on this.
I disagree, because Gavin Newsom came out tonight, again, after 5 nights of rioting and looting in his city, and did a political speech against Donald Trump.
Created. These folks would have went home.
Enforcing
they
the
would
law
have not been any rallies.
Enforcing law is not a problem Donald Trump created. Democrats, for a period of time, had the House, Senate, and White House. They could have changed immigration laws. They had the power to do that.
We had a bill, and Donald Trump said, don't pass it.
You had the White
Wait a
House,
second.
absolutely.
All right,
and
guys, we got to take a quick break. I just want to note also, Donald Trump was president for 4 years. He also could have changed immigration laws, but did
He's
not.
enforcing the ones in the books.
All right, we got to take
With the military.
We got to take a quick break here.
And again, guys, the states with the highest crime rates are red states. This fool's making an argument that if it wasn't for all this crime, he wouldn't have to come in here. Why don't you go to those red states where crime rates are higher? Mississippi, Arkansas, Louisiana. Like, this is just all garbage, all a distraction. He wanted this. He knew if he brought in the National Guard and the Marines that it would get not only this attention, but he wants violence. He wants people to get riled up, so it can distract from him being, let's just be real, very likely, I mean, extremely likely that he did something on Epstein's island. I mean, knowing the character of this guy is 24 credible sexual abuse allegations, civilly held liable rapist, the way he talks about his daughter, the way he even said on audio, you could hear him talking about walking into a pageant shows and the girls are naked, some as young as 15 years old, because he ran Miss USA. I mean, this is what this is about. He does not want people talking about any of those things, digging up all this stuff again. This is incredible. But I'm going to leave it there, guys. Let me know what you think about all this in the comments. Please leave a like, subscribe. It really helps push the message out there. And I'll catch you in the next one.